The high purpose of free speech. In the 1949 U.S. Supreme Court case Terminiello v. Chicago, Mr. Terminiello was a speaker inside an auditorium speaking to 800 people. Outside the auditorium, there were 1,000 people screaming and yelling at the people inside. The police weren't able to control the crowd, and Mr. Terminiello himself was ultimately arrested. Mr. Terminiello was reported to have referred to his opponents as slimy scum, snakes, and bedbugs. He was charged under a statute for stirring the public to anger, inviting dispute, bringing about a condition of unrest, or creating a disturbance. The court found that it was only through free debate and free exchange of ideas that government remains responsive to the will of the people and peaceful change is effected. Accordingly, a function of free speech under our system of government is to invite dispute. It may indeed best serve its high purpose when it induces a condition of unrest, creates dissatisfaction with conditions as they are, or even stirs people to anger. The concepts in the Terminiello case are taught to us by the practical lessons of history. In Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham Jail, he discussed this very issue. He says, "We have not made a single gain in civil rights without determined legal and nonviolent pressure. History is the long and tragic story of the fact that privileged groups seldom give up their privileges voluntarily. We know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed." Dr. King goes on to say in his letter, "Oppressed people cannot remain oppressed forever. The urge for freedom will eventually come. This is what has happened to the American Negro. Something within has reminded him of his birthright of freedom. Something without has reminded him that he can gain it. Injustice must be rooted out by strong, persistent, and determined action." A key point here, something without has reminded him that he can gain it. If you are able to see other Americans using free speech to bring about peaceful change, then at some point you're going to want to start using free speech to bring about peaceful change for yourself as well. So now we're going to go ahead and connect history up to our discussion about the Article 5 Constitutional Convention. This is Patrick Henry at the Virginia State Ratification Convention, June 5, 1788. This is when the state of Virginia had already elected delegates to go to a state ratification convention to decide whether or not they were going to approve of the new U.S. Constitution and join the new nation. And here's Patrick Henry. "Our situation will be deplorable indeed, nor can we ever expect to get this government amended, since I have already shown that a very small minority may prevent it, and that small minority interested in the continuance of the oppression." Patrick Henry goes on to say, "Will the oppressor let go the oppressed? Was there ever an instance? Can the annals of mankind exhibit one single example where rulers overcharged with power willingly let go the oppressed, though solicited and requested most earnestly? The application for amendments will therefore be fruitless." And here are some final statements from Patrick Henry on that day. "Sometimes the oppressed have got loose by one of those bloody struggles that desolate a country. But a willing relinquishment of power is one of those things which human nature never was, nor ever will be, capable of." Considering the statements from the Terminiello case, Dr. King, and Patrick Henry all together, and we look at calling for a constitutional convention per Article 5, we should all realize there's going to be discomfort when people hear others calling for the convention. They'll see it as stirring the pot, and in a sense it is, but that's the concept that appears repeatedly in history as the way to improve everyone's right of representation. Based on the history of the rushing of the Article 5 Convention Clause near the end of the Constitutional Convention, which we have established in another video on this channel, And in light of Madison's choice to cover up the defect in the Article 5 Convention Clause, which is a part of that same video, it is justified and warranted that we all make vociferous demands for the Article 5 Convention now, and that it must be a convention of the people, where the delegates are elected by the people in a one-person, one-vote standard, and the convention must have the full power of deliberation to do a clause-by-clause review. For further study, I invite you to take a look at my book, Guide to the First Article 5 Convention of the People.